Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Cabarrus County Schools Board of Education regular scheduled business meeting for Monday, August the 12th, 2013. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and our first item on the agenda tonight is to approve the agenda. And board members, we've had our work session and we've had the agenda laying around here, and we've had time to review it and all that. Do I have a motion tonight that we accept the agenda as it is presented?
Mr. Chair, I would prefer if we could on item 8.4, well, actually, I'm sorry, 8.6, that we refer that to the policy committee, especially in light of some additional information we've gotten this week.
We're going to need some help from our attorney on that because it's on action agenda. Can we take it off of this and put it on the action agenda? Is that what you recommend? I mean, take it off the action agenda and defer it right on to the policy committee, which is what Mr. Walters wanting to do?
If that's the pleasure.
But see, what I'm thinking, the board has to do, we have to discuss it first. I think it needs to come back, I think it's going to have to be discussed first, Rob, and then it'll have to come back. The board's going to have to discuss it. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so back to the original request. Do I have a motion that the agenda be approved as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Kiger motion and Mr. Phillips seconds it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is as presented. Our first item on the agenda is policies, and we'll have Dr. Chris Louder to the podium, and we're going to do the approval of policy
Mr.
17.
Chairman,
Yes.
I believe you skipped over the recognition.
Wait a minute, hold it. How did I? Oh, I did do
all right.
that. I'm sorry. I tell you when
You're trying to think about running a laptop and a meeting at the same time, so we'll cut you a little slack.
Well, what happened really when I rolled down to 8.5, I didn't get all the way back up far enough. So we got to move on.
In the interest of time, we probably would have gone along with you, but there's a lot of people here that would rather us start with something else.
I just didn't get back up there far enough. Thank you, Mr. Kiger, for bringing it to my attention, because Lord knows I didn't mean to do that. All right, so our recognitions, and we have Miss Ronnie Boone here for that. And so, Miss Boone, if you'll come to the podium, we do have one recognition tonight, and I'm proud to be a part of this. So thank you, Miss Boone.
Good evening. Thank you. I am only going to be up here very briefly. I would like to call Mr. Amos McClory, who is the president of the Cabarrus chapter of the NAACP, to the podium for a very special awards presentation. Mr. McClory.
Thank you. Good evening. Chairman Shue, Superintendent Shepard, elected members of the board, Cabarrus County school administrative staff, and those that are in the audience, we say good evening to you also. The Cabarrus County NAACP has requested this time in history, 122 years after the charter of Concord High School, 45 years after the first African American steps foot on Concord High School's property, a long ways away from your first principal, Dr. A.S. Webb. 15 principals later, the current #1 Spider, the oldest and boldest civil rights organization in the nation, the NAACP would like to present to one of the most highly qualified, most respected educator in the county. Now, and there's a couple of more minutes, just bear with me for a minute here. When I looked at some of the history of this school, Mr. Webb was your first principal, and quite a gentleman, and also quite a feisty fellow. I'm a Kannapolis guy, and I don't brag too much on Concord, but because Mr. Webb was such a feisty guy, and 1891, and we'll talk about his history. He was so feisty that you named the mascot after him, because he always bragged about bringing other teams into the web and chewing them up. Then you term yourself the Spider. In 1891, we'll have you to know that Logan was 3 days chartered before Concord, a school that's in this same county. This year, the Education Department of the NAACP announced the award, which has been approved by the Executive Board and will from henceforth be known as the Educator of the Decade Award. This award is limited to the educators in Cabarrus County, but not limited to African Americans only. Our first recipient of the 2013 award grew up in Cabarrus County, preschool in the Logan Community Daycare, educated in the very same system in which she works. We present to you Ms. Carla Black. So you can look at it. So, kind of new. Good, fresh, we thank the Board of Education for your time and allowing us to present this award at this setting.
I tell you, she's very deserving of that. You know, being a principal is not an easy job. So those of you that's principals already know that. So, but anyway, we appreciate you, Carla. Thank you so much for all that you do for us. Okay, now we'll get back on track here, and the next item of discussion, if there is any, is the approval of the minutes. And I wasn't here on July the 1st. Mr. Kiger had to chair the meeting. I was away with my wife on vacation that week. So I'll have to abstain from voting on this, but I can still call for the motion and all that. And so I'll call for a motion to have the minutes approved as presented, or if there are any changes or alterations.
Mr. Kiger did a fantastic job, and I approve this. I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion, and do I have a second?
We have a second for Mr. Kiger doing a fabulous job.
Okay, all right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, so the motion carries 6, Lynn Shue abstaining, and Ms. Monroe's got record of that. Okay, now we'll get into the report section for the board chair and the superintendent, and Ms. Carpenter's going to have some comments as well. Pretty much all that I have to say is I'm looking forward for the start of school. We got just a couple more weeks. Matter of fact, the 26th when school gets started and everybody's had time to go places and do things and get all rested up. Hopefully for me it's been sort of the opposite because of my 10-year-old grandson keeping me running all over the place. But we've had a good time, and we're looking forward to settling down now and getting to some serious school business and handle what we got to handle. And looking forward to a fantastic 2013-14 school year, and hoping to see us break records in all the different areas and the testing and all the different things, and looking forward to some of the new programs that we've got starting up here in the fall. And so I'm just real happy for Cabarrus County Schools and happy for all of you that are going to be joining us when school starts. And that's all that I have tonight, but Dr. Shepard, you have some comments, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few. The new school year has officially begun. Our students at our early college high school began classes on August the 7th, and we're just 2 short weeks away from students at our traditional schools beginning also. I want to wish all of our students, teachers, and parents a wonderful new school year. Let's start strong and keep the momentum going throughout the year. Also, as a reminder, our schools will host open house for new and returning students next week. Please check our Back to School website for information about dates and times. You can also find other important information about heading back to school there. I want to extend a warm welcome to our guest teachers from China. We have 3 teachers who will be assigned to 5 schools offering Chinese language and cultural instruction to students in elementary, middle, and high school. And their names are Long Ping Ji from Hickory Ridge Middle School, Lin Lin Fong from Cox Mill Elementary School, and Ming Ming Gao at Harrisburg Elementary and Hickory Ridge High School. Also, congratulations to Lisa Conger, our Director of Career and Technical Education for our district, who has been named the 2013 North Carolina Danny Hardy CTE Administrator of the Year. This honor recognizes a CTE administrator or Career and Technical Education administrator who is a leader and an innovator and has a passion for career and technical education. Also, congratulations are in order for Concord High School Fire Academy Chief David Barlow. Chief Barlow was named North Carolina new CTE Trade and Industry Teacher of the Year. Chief Barlow will now compete for the title of North Carolina CTE Teacher of the Year. And last, I want to recognize several of our administrators who recently completed the Global Education Leaders Program at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. This program is sponsored by Worldview, an organization whose mission is to develop a greater understanding of world regions, cultures, and global issues through professional learning opportunities and international travel for educators. And the following principals attended this summer this special educational program: Tripp Aldridge, principal at Harris Road Middle School; Jim Carroll, principal at Hickory Ridge Middle School; Karen Mitchell, assistant principal at Concord High School; Martha McCall, principal at Harrisburg Elementary; and Susan Owens, principal at Concord Middle School. And that is my report, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shepard, for your fine report this evening. And also, Ms. Carpenter has asked me to give her a minute or two to make an announcement. And so, Ms. Carpenter, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention it is fair time again. The fair will be running from September the 6th through the 14th, and I just wanted to remind you that you need to get your fair entries in by August the 23rd to the fair office. Now that's the entries if you're wanting to enter something in the fair, and that's for like the children, if they're wanting to make fair entries. And what you can do, you can go to the Cabarrus County Fair.com site, and you go under exhibits, and you can load the fair book, and that way you can find the different categories they have, and you can fill out that application, and then you can bring it by the fair office by 4:30 on August the 23rd, and then what you can do is just fill out that application, and that way they have your tags and everything printed for you. But you do have to get that into the fair office by August the 23rd by 4:30. Also, the special gate things they'll be having on Saturday, September the 7th, there'll be free general gate admission for all from 1 to 3 p.m. On Sunday, September the 8th, it's Food Line Hunger Relief Day. Free general admission for all from 1 to 3. If you bring 4 canned good items for adults and 2 for children. And then on Tuesday, September the 10th, is School Education Night. $1 off general admission when you show off your school spirit by wearing your favorite grade school to college attire. So make sure you wear those school colors. And so we'll see you at the fair.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. I bet you do like going to fairs, don't you?
I do.
I do too. My wife loves that cotton candy, boy. She just gets it. Okay, the next section, folks, is the guest speaker section, and to my knowledge, we don't have any registered guest speakers. Is that correct, Ms. Monroe? Okay, so we have no guest speakers tonight lined up, and then the next item will be the consent agenda, and these are the items that we talked about and were in discussions last week, and we all agreed that they would move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion that the consent agenda be approved as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Kiger makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Harrison seconds the motion. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda has been approved as it has been presented to us. Now we're getting to the action agenda, and we've got Chris Louder at the podium along with Ms. Burns, and we're going to talk about policies for a little while. Okay, so Mr. Louder, it's up to you.
Right, I think we have some policies that were moved to the action agenda after last week's work session. We revised the policies to address some of the concerns that you raised. The revisions that you guys asked for are in blue. I think there was some more discussion on the second to the last policy, and I think Ms. Carpenter requested to be able to vote on the last policy. So you may be able to move more quickly through those first ones, but at this point, I guess we defer to the board on how to proceed if you look at the revisions that you guys have.
Right, and board members, I would just ask you to, if you had revisions, I'm hoping that you have reviewed those revisions to make sure that they're satisfactory to what you wanted, and that we can go ahead and move forward with these policies. And as Dr. Louder said, there was really only 2 policies of these on the first reading that we needed to spend more time on, I think. But so I'll just open the floor up to the board members for 1710 and 4021, which was 8.1 on our agenda. Are there any further discussions on this item? Okay. All right. Do I have a motion that this policy be approved as presented on the first reading?
So moved.
Mr. Harrison makes the motion.
And I'll second that.
Shoemaker makes it the second. Do I have any? Is all in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed to this policy? Okay, that one's approved as presented there. All right. Now the next one we'll move on to is 8.02, and this is policy 1720-4015, student discrimination, harassment, and bullying complaint procedures. All right, I'll follow the same procedure here unless Dr. Louder has anything he wants to add. Okay, do we have any further discussion on 8.2? Do I have a motion that 8.2 be approved as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Kiger
Second.
makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Shoemaker seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The next item is 8.3. It's policy 1725, 7225, employee discrimination, harassment, and bullying complaint procedure on the first reading also. And we'll follow the same procedure. This is the first reading. Are there any other further discussion on this policy?
I had a question or a correction. Our policy doesn't match the heading title. It's the heading title says 1725/7225. Yeah, when you go to the policy, the 7225 is crossed off. Is that correct, or is
1740
am I on the
or
right?
1725?
1725.
That's an error. That should be 7225 on the heading.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
And-
something we can correct pretty easy, I believe.
And then my other comment was if we'd add something to kind of define what the investigator was under number 6, but those are my 2 thoughts.
We did not.
Right, and you're just saying that you would like to further define investigator? or
Yeah,
what?
in one of these other policies, we defined that a little bit further, but this one we didn't.
Mr. Walter, is the other definition of investigator, are you saying you want that transposed over to this policy so they'll be matched? Is that
I
what
think
you're
the other policy just referred to somewhere else in the policy where it kind of talked about that.
Yes, I see where it is. In 1720, in the definition of investigator, Part 6, we reference to Section B, where we set forth the various reporting, to whom reports may be brought to. And so I think in 1725, we can likewise add some language to mimic that and say, in A6, refer to Section B.
So essentially
That's it.
mirror that for the second one?
Yes.
Okay.
Would that be satisfactory?
Yes.
Okay, with that change noted, are there any further discussion? All right, with those changes recommended, and you'll bring that back to us at the second reading, do I have a motion that policy 1725 and 7225 be approved?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Walters makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Harrison seconds the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries 7-0. The next item on our agenda is 8.4. This is policy 1740 and 4010, student and parent grievance procedure. This, again, is on the first reading. I don't think we had any real issues with it last week, to my knowledge. Does anyone have anything they want to add or any comments on this policy?
Mr.
Right.
Chair, was this the one that Mr. Walter?
No, this is not. We're getting to that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting to that. All right.
Let's see. Going back to my notes. It's good. I did have a question on section, where is this? EB. I don't know if we got an answer from last week on why the difference in days where there was a 20-day period on this policy, but yet on 1710 and 1720 we have a 30-day period. It just didn't seem consistent. Was there a reason for that?
Last week, I think my guess on that was that it was a school month of 20 days, but a specific reason, I don't have one, except that, again, that's kind of a reasonable period of time, and that was what the committee discussed at the committee meeting. But
Is there a reason why we're not consistent between the two policies? Was the question.
one policy says 20 and one says 30, I think, and he was
Yes.
asking what the difference in those two were.
My mic's not lighting up.
Thanks. And it may also be that that's where these policies come out to us from the School Board Association as templates. And so over the years, one may have said 20, the other 30. If the board would like to change it to 30, I don't see there necessarily being a problem with that at all. It's likely that these are just been different templates over the years, have had different days in them.
Mr. Chair, can I comment?
Absolutely.
If we use 20 and we're talking about work days, then we should say 20 work days. If we're using 30 and we're talking about calendar, then we should say calendar. That way you describe what days is, so there is no confusion as to what you mean. That would be the way I would rectify your situation.
We can just change that to 30 calendar days. Okay.
But definition B1 days says days mean working days.
It's already defined.
That may explain why this is 20 days and
Right.
the others were 30.
Well, I would just say 20 working days, just to make sure that you're redundant and there's no room for interpretation.
So I just want to clarify and make sure. So 20 working days is the pleasure of the board, or
Is that okay with you,
or
Mr.
30
Walter?
calendar days.
Is that what you're wanting?
I just think we ought to be consistent. If we
I
have one
agree.
policy that has a window of 30 days and one policy that has a window of 20 days, it'd be consistent, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, as long as that's, the policies are relevant, and in this case they are, so it would need to be consistent. Mr. Kiger.
Yeah, I guess I'd rather know the reason why it is the way it is before I say, hey, let's just change it. I mean, there may not be any reason, and it may need to line up, but there may be something there that I'd rather hear, that a definitive, there's no reason to have two separate time periods before I would say, yep, let's just go ahead and change it.
To the best of my knowledge, there's no rhyme or reason behind the two separate time periods. I think we're fine to change them both to be 30 days to be consistent. One thing I do want to point out is that we do clarify in 1720 and 1725 that we're counting days as school days. And I think it's important to count in terms of based on our school calendar as opposed to working days, particularly in terms of our students, because our students are in session, that days our teachers are not in session. And so I would ask that any revisions we make, we stick to it as consistent with school days. And so whether we want to make it 20 or 30 across these three policies, I think that's satisfactory.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Can I weigh in on just one more?
Yes.
In support of what Sarah just said was, if you use 20 school days, then when you have your intervals like spring vacation or winter vacation, because you have a gap in actual work days or school days, then you're protected. If you use 30 calendar days, then you're kind of roped in, and when you have those intervals of time of absence, then the parents are kind of left out of the loop for 2 weeks, and they may have had other plans or whatever. So I believe we should be consistent with school days, because that's kind of how we really do our operation. That's our normal way of operating rather than the calendar days. I would think that would be the preferred way for anything dealing with grievances or policies that deal with students having to report back or us as administrators having to execute.
I think you're right, Mr. Shoemaker. I think that's what we should do. Is that Mr. Harrison?
Is it feasible to kind of do a quick search through the policy and get this consistent across any policies that may have discrepancies on these days?
Yeah.
So that we can get to a consistent...
All the ones that are up here will change to 20 school days, but there may be some things that aren't up for revision that could be different. I mean, we can review the ones that are essentially grievances and what we think fall into the same category, and we can talk about that at the next committee, at the policy committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. Just
We're gonna now go ahead.
again, just to get consistent across all policies.
Right, and across these, we're going to change it to 20 school days.
Thank you so much for your work.
Okay.
Okay, board members, are there any further discussion on 1740 and 4010, student and parent grievance procedure? This is the first reading. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion that this policy be approved as presented with the changes that Dr. Louder will incorporate before he brings them back to our second reading? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Harrison makes the motion. Mr. Shoemaker seconds it. All in favor say aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We move to 8.5. This is policy 3470, alternative learning programs and schools, also on the first reading. I once again don't remember any major issues with this policy. Dr. Louder, did we have anything else on this one? Okay.
I think this was the one where I was just asking for clarification that the alternative program will not necessarily replicate identically the curriculum that the student had at the previous school. And I think that's what you've done here on just at the end of section 2, where it says, in order, you'll come up with strategies for the student in order to progress in core academic courses towards graduation.
Right.
So that's, if it's some special class they were taking, that you may not offer it.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Phillips, is the policy the way you wanted it?
Yes, I think that meets
Okay.
what I was looking for.
All right, are there any further discussion? Mr.
I just had
Walden?
a question, and it's not an issue on the policy. But under D, the second paragraph, under transition to learning programs or schools, the last paragraph where it talks about the school will assist in transition to other educational settings, would the military fall into that?
We did take a look into your question about that. My understanding is that in order to enter the military, you're required to either have a high school diploma or a GED. And so we would be advising the student into obtaining one of those from which they could then go and join the military based on my limited research.
Thank you, Ms. Stone, for your answer. Any further discussion? All right, do I have a motion that the policy 3470, alternative learning program schools on the first reading be approved as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Kiger makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Harrison seconds the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, we'll move down to 8.6. This is policy 5030, community use of facilities on the first reading. And we did get hung up on this a little bit last week, and Mr. Walters, I think, had some comments and some concerns. And so what I'd like to do at this point is to, let's all look at this policy. And Mr. Walter, if you will, bring your concerns to us and let us look at it and let us discuss it. What I would ultimately like to see us do is approve the policy with the changes that our attorney has already put in, and on the first reading, so that we'll have a policy in force when school starts, which is something that we got to have. We've 5030's been kicked around, and we've been a lot of good minds look at this policy already to try to make it as good as we can. But I understand there are some issues. I don't know whether we on or off, but I think maybe we might be on since the power went off. So. But anyway, we'll carry on. So let's just hear what Mr. Walters has to say, and then we'll discuss it for a little while. And hopefully, at the end result, though, we'll approve it. And then if we need to discuss it further, we can bring it back. Mr. Walters?
Okay, well, first off, we do have a policy in place, and I don't see any rush, or I would not want to rush this policy to pass it before the beginning of the school year, because it's going to affect some community organizations. I've got several well, I've got a handful of issues with it, and Sarah has made some corrections, and I think those are appropriate. But to go into, you want to go into detail on what these are?
Yeah, Mr. Walter, you need to elaborate for a little while. Now, we're going to take all night to do this, but we want you to elaborate a little bit what your concerns are and, what the repercussions possibly or could be and that kind of thing, because
All right.
it's going to have to be a board discussion. It's not one person's decision, it's a board decision.
No one's saying that. But anyway, to start off with, this is more, the policy, as I read it, seems to be more of a short-term policy. Somebody using a ball field, somebody using our facility for a church service, an event, a meeting, or something to that effect. So I thought it would be appropriate to call it a short-term use of facilities. And I didn't want anything that this policy to limit us for using facilities in the future. That was one of the issues that I had. The second other issue I had with this policy was towards the end of the policy under H, where it says any person or organization may request a review of any decision made by staff pursuant to the policy in accordance with policy 1740, parent and student grievance policy. Well, if it's a community organization that for some reason doesn't have the ability to, doesn't get to use the facility that they want to, there should be a grievance policy, but if they're not a parent or student, this is not an applicable procedure. I think we need to have some reference to, we've got a section, is it 5,000, that deals with community. I think there should be some reference to include community in that. And then really the biggest issue here, and being new to the school board, I don't really have the background. I wasn't on the policy committee to hear what all was going on why we're moving forward with these type of changes. But I would hate to see, and this is the other thing that I was referring to earlier, that we have this additional information that we didn't have last week, that probably, I don't know if we need to be specific on this. I would rather have discussed it in a committee setting, but we've got organizations that will be adversely affected by these decisions. In effect, we are raising the rates on some of our churches or community organizations, and I wouldn't want us to say that we're being discriminatory for these organizations, and most of them are going to, the ones that jump out at me here are the ones that are using our facilities for services. So I think if we are going to implement a change that's going to affect rates, that we don't just give them a 30-day notice. That to rush it for the next school year. So this month, when they're planning for next year, that all of a sudden we're going to say, well, you're paying $1,500 today. Well, you're paying $9,000 next month, and I just don't think that's right. And those were my main issues on this policy.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. I fully understand the issues, particularly the item, where it said parent and student can grieve. And the community needs to, or, even anyone that's using the facilities ought to have the right to grieve if they feel like it's something they need to do. And so I fully understand that needs to be implemented.
Right, and Ms. Stone can correct me on this, but I think that's just a simple cross-reference to 5,000 that we can add, and that will take care of that. Am I right there, Ms. Stone?
Yes, I believe that's an easy way we can revise that. And the way this policy is drafted is it directs a community member who does feel that their request to use a facility was wrongfully denied. It directs them into that policy to give them a right to bring it that way. And what we can do is we can tweak some of the language in there and add a cross-reference to the 5,000 series, which does apply to community organizations, to make it clear that this policy applies, the parent-student grievance process applies for anyone who interacts with a decision, an adverse decision of the administration, which majority of those do come from our parents and students. And so we can easily make that reference and add that cross-reference.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Stone. And then the other major issue that Mr. Walters has, board members, is the fees. And I fully understand that hypothetically, if a person's paying $5,000 today, and then school year starts, he's paying $10,000 without any type of a notice. I think that does need to be tweaked a little bit. I'd like to sort of find out how the fees were set. I don't think we've discussed that. Maybe Ms. Klutz can approach the podium and tell us how and why, and the fees gone from A to B to C or whatever, and let us sort of get an idea of what the real purpose is of raising fees. Thank you, Ms. Klutz.
Good evening. We've been looking at the facility use policy for approximately 2 years, to say the least, probably longer than that. There were a lot of things that we needed to address. One of the things was fee structure and making sure that we were taking care of our internal cost, and that's been the most important thing during the last several years. Recently, anyway, the association that provides us our board policy sent out a PowerPoint presentation, legal guidance, that basically said a lot of school systems were not handling facility use properly, and we could get into some liability issues. And based on that PowerPoint presentation, that all of that came back to our meeting, and we involved legal with that, so that we were charging fees so that consistently, so that we didn't have legal liability. So many points were addressed in that PowerPoint presentation. One of the biggest issues was applying the fee consistently to all groups, or the groups, and we were not doing that. We are not doing that with our facility, our current facility use schedule. We have something that's called a site-based fee. So we have the fee that the system charges to cover the lights and the normal usage, and then we allow the school to charge a site-based fee up to $350 per daily use to recoup their paper products and the use and the things that will happen there at the school that the school has to take care of on their own. So depending on the organization, some schools would charge the maximum amount, and that also was indicative of how many people were using that facility. So if you had a church that had 300 people and there was a lot of paper product use and a lot of custodial needed, that kind of thing, it was pretty reasonable to charge the maximum amount of the site-based fee. If you had 10 people in that school using that facility, it didn't seem reasonable to charge $350. And so we allowed the schools to make those decisions. We now know that we can't do that. And that's the basis of the fee structure change, so that we're consistent and evenly applying that. And what's going to happen, so one of the things is with the site-based fee, that money went directly back to the school. And so the school, if the school uses more paper products, then they'll get billed by facilities. They'll take that facility use money, they'll apply it to their custodial, and then that way they can still allow the community to use their facility and not have to pay for the extra products themselves. So that goes to that need. So now that we're going to be consistently applying it, the schools that were charging the highest site-based fee may now have a decrease in their revenue, and those organizations will have a decreased fee, a slightly decreased fee, not much. The organizations that were not charged a site-based fee or were charged a very low site-based fee are now going to see an increase, some more than others. If the school wasn't charging any site-based fee, they're definitely going to see an increase. At the end of the day, my goal was just to keep Cabarrus County Schools in a neutral position, and that's how the fee structure was scheduled. We've also done an analysis around the system. We've looked at governments, we've looked at school systems, surrounding counties, and we are in line with this new fee schedule. Prior to the change, and we've not changed it yet, I understand that, with our current fee schedule, we are lower than most surrounding counties, government, schools. With this current schedule, we're in line with our local government, our county, our city, and the schools around us.
Kelly, are we changing a fee schedule? Are we approving a fee schedule, or we're approving a change in policy?
You are not
We're not approving the fee schedule.
You are not approving the fee schedule. But I understood the question to be, how did the schedule come about? It's a very good point. You're not approving this fee schedule. Okay. Sorry, I lost train of thought. So we needed to protect our schools and the amount of revenue that they need to take care of their custodial issues and that type thing. And we did want to give the organizations notice. I thought 60 days. Sarah has indicated January 1st, which is perfectly fine with me. I just want to be legal and keep our system operating at a net zero, and to restructure the fee schedule so that no one loses and we're recouping our money. And we're consistently applying fees. This is basically where we have to be to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Klutz. And definitely, for sure, we don't want the schools to provide the facilities and lose money doing it.
Yes, sir.
We're having to fight for resources now just to keep things going like they need to go. And so we surely don't want to offer them at a loss to the school system, and the schools take what little money they get to, for that type thing. And then another thing, we for surely don't want to be discriminatory in any way. We want it to be fair and no favoritism and none of that stuff. It's going to be fair for everybody. What one pays, the other pays, and that type thing. And so, as long as it's like that, I'm okay with it. Even though, like you said, some will see an increase and some will see a decrease, but that's an adjustment period that we're going to have to do to make things right. And so, with that being said, I want to open it up for board discussion, and we'll start on Mr. Shoemaker's side. And anything that you have to say, Mr. Shoemaker, by all means, let's discuss this. And keep it in mind, though, we're talking about policy 5030, facilities, communities use, and one of the concerns Mr. Walter had was the fees, which is really not associated with this policy. It's a separate item, and we'll have to vote on that at some other time, won't we? We don't vote on that at all.
The policy indicates that administrative staff will set the fee structure so that we're breaking it. I'm looking for the words. Maybe you guys can
Well,
help
you
me.
close, breaking even.
Yeah, breaking even.
You're breaking even, covering our costs.
Covering our costs.
So really what our goal tonight is to move forward with policy 5030. But Mr. Shoemaker, you can go ahead and bring your comments and concerns, and then we'll come on down the line. Also, keep in mind, we've had a pretty terrific thunderstorm right now, and so if the power goes out or something like that, we'll just sit tight, because maybe it'll come right back on. So, Mr. Shoemaker, go ahead.
All right. Due to the fact that this policy doesn't actually specifically talk about the fee structure specifically, you made some allusions in your example, Ms. Klutz, that some organizations have more people than other organizations, and so thus the amount of attention and amount of usage of resources in that facility will vary dramatically depending on how much they use. Is your fee structure sensitive to that?
Currently, it does not indicate the number of attendees, although it does space-wise. There is, so if you're renting a gymnasium, there's a higher fee. If you're renting an auditorium, there's a higher fee. Obviously, you can put more people in those facilities, and those things were considered when the fee structure was set. So not directly, but indirectly.
So the fee structure is based on, excuse me, I'll try to turn it off. The fee structure is based on some room or some facility, some subset of the facility. So if you were to have a large number of people that were attending some event that was being rented out, would you use that as a determinant as to how many custodial folks that you would need to support that event? And is that a separate fee for custodial?
That is a separate fee for the staff, and so that would be a determining factor in how many clerical or custodial, not clerical, custodial hours that you would need. I guess what we focus on is that if you're renting a classroom, you're not going to get as many people into a classroom as you are an auditorium, and so the fee structure is higher for that. There's also things built in like tournament fees. So if you're conducting a tournament on our property, although you're a youth organization, you're still going to pay a tournament fee because you are generating revenue. So there's all kinds of things like that, and they're very similar. We did a lot of research on systems around us, the county's facility use fee, the city's facility use fee, and it seems to be a really good fit for charging fees when we need to charge fees.
So, Mr. Loud, or Doctor,
Everyone's fine.
help me out. So this policy deals specifically with the fee, not with the custodial piece of it. So we're looking at a reduction in a discount in the fee that we would charge for a classroom, a fee that we would charge for use of the cafeteria, a fee we would charge for the use of multiple rooms. So you have that in your fee structure, and these 25 and 50% offs that you have in the policy are off of that specific fee, not off the custodial fees or any of that.
It's off the total fee. So if you're completing the facility use form and your fee is $500 as calculated, and you're a youth organization and you get a 50% discount, then you're now paying $250. So it's off of everything. So that's one of the variables that I had to work with so that we have consistent application, and we also covered our cost. So if we're given a 50% reduction to a youth organization, I have to make sure that we're still covering our costs somewhere. And that means maybe a little bit elevated higher fees than we had in the past. And that's some of that you're seeing.
Right, so the fee in this policy is actually composed of several components. The labor component, the resource component, like bathroom tissue and paper towels and other types of things like that, the electricity, and the fee for usage of the property. Is that correct?
That's correct. And at the top of our fee facility use form, we have an indication. We're telling the public when they're signing the facility use form and they're reading the facility use form, we tell them that's what our fee structure is covering. We're covering supervision and someone to take care of it. We're covering custodial type things, and we're covering the electricity, the things that we have to cover.
So should we use the word regular fee? Because regular fee denotes something fixed in my mind. And so the word regular kind of means this is the regular fee, or is it the computed fee? Because depending on what you're actually renting or using, the fee could vary. And so I'm just thrown off on our policy. It says regular fee, and so I was thinking, oh yeah, the fee to use the building was $250, so you get some money off, and it was just a standard regular fee. But it sounds like the fee is actually variable, depending on the size of the event and the people involved and that type of thing.
Do we have to say any kind of fee, or could we just say fee? Could we take the word regular out?
We can remove the adjective and just say fee.
Okay.
Would that make you happy, Mr. Shoemaker?
Well, I'm sorry I beat around the bush, but part of it is trying to understand what the fee is,
Absolutely.
because we don't see that. What we're seeing
Absolutely.
is a policy, and
That's right.
and I understand Mr. Walter's concern because it is a little bit vague, and you want to make sure that you're being fair that all the people that want to use our facilities, because nighttime they're generally unused, and we want to encourage the public to use
Absolutely.
something they've invested a lot of money in.
Right, and the county, for a very long time, has encouraged us to make the schools and facilities more available to the community. And this policy, along with the fee schedule, is going to help at least get us in line where we need to be, and we won't be losing money doing it. And so it's a good thing that we're getting it ironed out. Ms. Carpenter, I'm
I
sorry.
have one more question.
Yes, okay, Mr. Shoemaker.
Nonprofit youth organizations and nonprofit organizations, you could split hairs on that, by that definition. Let's just say you have a religious institution that has children ministries in it. How do you term them? Because they have both adult and children, or since they're a miscegenation of both, are they truly a youth, or are they? So I wonder if we should be splitting hairs on that final level because generally there are always adults involved in a youth activity, and the adults are helped. So someone can clarify that for me.
This was a provision that was discussed at great length with the policy committee. My understanding is I didn't attend all those meetings. Mr. Henriquez was at a number of those. However, the concern was that there are a number of organizations that use our facilities that are, so call it primary mission youth organizations. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Boys and Girls Clubs, those types of groups. And that this designation is intended to capture those. I think we could probably add some additional language to help clarify this piece. I do agree there can be an argument that splits hairs, but I would say if a year down the road, if I was being asked to interpret this policy, I would look at it and say, well, yes, there's going to be adults in all organizations, but what is the primary mission of the nonprofit? Is it a nonprofit geared towards working with children, or is it a nonprofit that services both adults and children? And that would be my distinguishing factor. But to those who are on the committee, I also defer to additional comments for you.
On the facility use document itself, we have youth organizations defined, nonprofit youth organizations. Our youth organization means any group or organization intended to serve young people under the age of 21. I thought that was in the actual policy. They're intended to serve.
It's there in A.
In A. Okay. You need more than that? Do we need more than that? No, it was just. Okay. And that's on the facility use document too, so when they're determining, it'll define it for them.
Okay, you good to go, Mr. Shoemaker? I am. Okay, Ms. Carpenter.
You made a comment. Is this going to be effective? You made some comment about January, and then I see down here September. When are we saying we're going to make it effective?
I think when we discussed some of Mr. Walter's concern, I think everybody involved said that's a reasonable point. We can pass the policy now and say that the price change, it will be a policy with price changes effective January 1, so they'll have time to communicate if that's something that the board would like to do. That's an easy change.
Ms. Carpenter, you done?
I'm done.
Okay, good show. Mr. Kiger, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I wanted to go back to one of Mr. Walter's original points of short-term versus long-term. I'm not sure I quite understand that, but I do want to tell you that in here, it talks about the memorandum of understanding that we have with the county, which encompasses, it used to be Parks and Rec. Donna, help me. Active living and recreation. I should know that. I'm the vice chair of that commission, but I can't ever remember that name. So that encompasses field use in the fall, gym use in the winter, field use in the spring, until such time as both parties decide to do something else. And we're operating under the current one since 1971. So I don't see that going away anytime soon. And Mr. Shoemaker, just real quick, we do want to have people use our facilities, but you made mention of them being empty, and I can't speak for anywhere else, but I can tell you in Harrisburg, the gyms are used from 5. I think the first time we use it is 5:30 until 9 o'clock, 6 days a week. Well, Saturday starts at 7 a.m. and then they end at 9 o'clock at night for youth basketball practice inside 6 times a week. So
right,
anyway,
I know the athletic facilities
Yeah.
are fully used, but other areas of the facilities are not.
Right.
That's more our reference.
So anyway, as long as we've got memorandum of understanding is in the policy, I want to make sure that doesn't get trumped somehow when we actually finally execute the joint use agreement, which I'm not sure exactly where we stand on that. But Donna, I guess just give me a nod of the head or a shake yay or nay. Okay, that's what I thought. So as far as I'm concerned, that's covered and we're fine.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Carpenter, you key down. Okay. Mr. Walter, you have any further comments you want to add?
Thanks, Blake. It was a better understanding exactly what that meant. Kelly, you provided us with the facility use analysis. Can you, again, go through what these columns mean? You have an old maintenance fee, new maintenance fee, variance, and then over here you have old total, and old, what is
Okay, I don't have that pulled up, and I'll try to get it pulled up while I'm talking to you. But, so the old maintenance fee, so there's a fee that we charge under the current facility use policy. There's the total fee. Oh, he's going to bring it to me. How nice. Thank you so much. The old maintenance fee is the site-based fee. So if the schools were allowed to charge up to $350,
okay, that's the $350
yes,
you're
it's
talking about.
up to $350. So if you just glance down to some of those things, you're going to see that when schools didn't charge a site-based old maintenance fee, then under the new fee structure, they're going to see a higher fee. When they did charge the 350 max old maintenance fee, you're going to see that their fee is slightly lower. So that's the old maintenance fee. The new maintenance fee is along with the new facility structure, and that's because, and we separate those because the maintenance fee goes back to the school to maintain the custodial products and that kind of thing. So we have to keep that separate. The variance in the maintenance recovery fee is basically the impact to the school. That's what we were measuring. So I used to send you $10,000. I'm going to send you $7,500 now. And we want the school to know that. We want to measure that. The total, old total versus new total, and then there's we're showing you the discount.
So that's the maintenance fee plus this other stuff, then less the discount. Is that what you're?
Which column?
Old total, new total. How do you calculate the new total column?
Okay, the new total column is the maintenance fee. We're calling it recovery fee, I think. The fee for the lights and any custodial usage in there. So we took, if someone rented the facility yesterday, we applied the old fee structure, and if they're going to rent it in the future using the same idea, we applied the new facility.
With the proposed discounts.
Exactly, with the
so
proposed discounts.
That's where we get the variance to follow the last column there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Variance for the total fee. So generally, you would look at it and you would want to see the variance from the total fee and make your decision. But I needed to know what impact it's going to have to my schools. So
it makes sense now. I appreciate you going through it. I mean, I'm still troubled when there's a facility that's going to see a $9,000 increase and another one that'll could potentially see $11,000 increase. But again, overall, I understand it better. Thank you.
And this is the annual, so if they're renting it every single week or if they're renting it twice a year, you're just seeing we duplicated the fee structure for old and the fee structure for new. So it might be annual for one organization and the other organization may have used it for one time.
Okay, Mr. Walter, you good to go now? Okay. All right, Mr. Harrison, you have comments?
I do have 3 questions, but I'll try to ask them separately. Where does the money go?
Okay. Part of the money goes to the schools, and the other part of the money is applied against the custodial labor. So we have to, if we provide a custodian, we'll apply that toward there. And the other portion goes toward electric usage. So electric and water, those kinds of things. So really, we're just truly intending to cover our cost and provide the school with some resources so that they can replace their toilet paper and paper products.
So an organization comes in, their charge is $300, and you divvy it up according to those 3 criteria.
We do.
Okay.
We do.
So it is to some extent a profit for the school. Is that? I don't mean a profit, but there is a advantage to the school's general fund and general usage funds. Is that correct?
Yes. The way that it was structured before, a school could kind of manage and vary a little profit from it, depending. So if they charged the maximum amount of a site-based fee, but they only had 10 or 20 people coming, then they're not going to use that many custodial products, that kind of thing. So they could manage to generate revenue through that. With this system, everyone's going to be charged the same thing, so you're not going to have as much ability to do that.
I know this is not the time to make a motion, Mr. Chair, but I would ask the board to consider for a motion later on to amend the policy to take effect January 1st and to vote to approve it tonight, but again, effective. The rate sheet can be effective January 1st if that's agreeable.
I completely agree.
And so I'm trying to ask if that is agreeable as opposed to making the motion. Generally, we can consider that at the right time.
We'll refer that to our attorney. She's the legal expert.
If and when, after the board members are all finished making comments, if a motion would like to be made to approve the policy as presented with whichever revisions you'd like to include, such as an effective date, we certainly can do that at that time. But I think we have a few more comments.
And just one last comment. I would ask our local media and our website to make announcements to this effect, but if I can borrow this list from Mr. Walter, I see absolutely no reason to communicate individually with each of these groups. I think it's incumbent upon them to know what the rate sheets are. We're doing them as much of a favor as we can, I hope, to give them that amount of time, but I'm not at all suggesting that we should individually communicate with each of those customers. That they should avail themselves of this information and know what their rates will be January 1st, if that's the pleasure of the board at that time. So I think that covers the three things. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. And Mr. Phillips, you have your time now.
Okay, thank you. A lot of my questions and concerns have been addressed with the other board members' questions. I did see one thing that I didn't see at our last meeting, and I apologize I didn't catch it then, but in the Section D fee structure in the red, it says all individuals and groups except for school-related groups and local governments with an executed MOU shall pay a fee to use the school facility. So it implies that if you're a school-related group, you don't have to pay a fee. Now, I assume that the intent here is Cabarrus County school-related group, not a private school or a charter school that wants to come and use our facilities for free. Therefore, we should clarify that this is a Cabarrus County school system related group.
I'm getting a head nod from legal. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very good catch.
Thank you. Then the other thing I'm struggling with is that you said you would set the rates so that we could cover our cost, and I believe that you're saying that you'll recover the cost as a whole, so that we probably are actually going to make a little bit of a profit on the for-profit groups, and then that allows us to lower the rates for the nonprofits. On the one hand, it's like, well, okay, we should charge market rates to for-profit groups for our facilities. We have a hard enough time meeting our needs, and so that's good. What I'm struggling with a little bit is that I don't think we certainly should not make a profit on a religious group, nor should we subsidize one. I mean, we got to just charge them exactly what our costs are. And so I'm assuming that's what the 25% discount does, is it gets us down to where we're not subsidizing either a profit nor a subsidy. But then, if that's true, for the youth groups, we're giving a 50% discount, which means we are subsidizing those groups. And again, given our financial situation, I'm not sure it's the mission of the Cabarrus County Schools to subsidize non-school related nonprofit youth groups. And so I would suggest that we get rid of that particular discount and just have all nonprofits 25%. We're not subsidizing you, but we're not making a profit off of you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. You have any further comments? Okay. Well, what do you think about that, Ms. Klutz? You think we can do that? Or Dr. Louder?
There was a strong feeling in Policy Council And we've also called in principals to work with us in this committee, that we are here to serve youth. And anything that we can do to keep youth in our schools and on our premises, we should do that. So that's why the youth organizations received a higher discount. Certainly, if the board's pleasure is not to provide that level of discount, we can change that, although I just feel strongly from our principals and our advocates that we are here to serve youth.
And I agree with that. You know, that's the purpose of the buildings, is to teach the children and for the youth. So, well, you know, we've got several ideas on the table. I think, does anybody else have anything else? Mr. Shoemaker, you got something else?
Well, there's probably a number of groups that we're in a contract with at this point in time. Would you say that your list is a complete list of people that we have an ongoing contract with? And does that contract go past January, or do you know the dates on those contracts? Because I think if we're going to change fee structure on groups that we have contracts with, we have to let them know that we're going to change their fee structure to set out a brand new contract with them, to give them an opportunity to possibly research other venues if that's what they choose.
The list that you have, the analysis, is extremely detailed and long, comes from anyone and everyone who has ever rented our facilities. Most of these do not rent our facility on a normal, everyday basis, and that was part of a question. I'm sorry, I can't remember which one of you had, Mr. Harrison, that would we contact, or would we be expected to contact? What we generally do is contact those that are regular users and send them a letter and say, just to let you know, this is a new fee structure, you'll have to have a new facility use form. Because part of our facility use form and policy requires that they prepay, they pay in advance. We do not have extended users beyond, a month or so. So that facility use form is good for what they prepay. So to have anything beyond January the 1st, I would be very, very surprised. I'll certainly go back and look to see if anybody's prepaid for that period of time, but my guess would be no.
So when you say they prepay, so they pay the balance, let's say they want to use the facility for a year, then they pay the entire year's cost up front?
No one does that.
Well, I heard prepay.
They do, but they pay for a month at a time. So they'll fill out a facility use form. They'll include the 4 or 5 Sundays they're on in that month. They'll send me a check for that. That guarantees them that facility use for that period of time. I don't know of anyone that does it really beyond a month. So that would take care of our January 1st situation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Okay, Dr. Launer, now, if we do what has been suggested, that we approve policy 5030 on first reading, and it doesn't, with all the incorporated changes, it don't become into effect until January 1, is that something that we can live with until January 1, and everybody gets notified, and everybody hopefully will be on the same page, and everybody will be happy?
Yeah, I know Mr. Walter gave 3 specific things that he looked at, and one of those, I think we said we could answer by cross-referencing. Ms. Stone just said there's 4. We could cross-reference 5,000, and that would take care of the being able to access from the outside. We could do that. We'll make the policy effective January 1 of 2014, which would take care of the notice. I thought when Mr. Collier was talking about the MOU that you were good with one of the first things you suggested, but you may need to clarify how we can fix that, which was the term, I think.
Yeah, I think Sarah and I had a discussion earlier, and I think I'm comfortable with that. Do you want to elaborate on what that was?
And if I may, is it appropriate to link the rate sheet to the policy? Or better to keep them separate as far as website and link is concerned?
It's better to keep them separate. We will want to, if we have, bless our hearts, if we ever get a pay raise and we have to raise the custodial rate and what we charge, or the FICA in the retirement goes up sometimes, and then we have utility increases, pretty much annually. So we need to incorporate those within that fee structure and be able to increase those without coming to board for board policy.
Mr. Harrison, that all now? You good?
And did I miss, was Mr. What were you asking, Ms. Stone?
Certainly, there was a question over whether or not we need to address the term use of this policy, and for a short-term versus a long-term use. The policy itself provides for anything less than a year. The superintendent or designee can handle that. If someone wants to use our facilities for an ongoing basis for a longer term, and again, this is a use of facility, not complete, not having the facility, not a complete, renting or leasing of the facility, but they want to use our facilities for more than a year, they have to come to the board. If an entity ever wanted to actually lease part of our facility and completely take over control of that facility for any point in time, there is a separate facilities policy that covers that in the, I believe it's the 9000 series that talks about how we handle our real estate, including buildings. And so we had that discussion about the distinction between this policy dealing with simply the use of the building for a duration of time, however the building maintains in our full control, versus an actual lease or a full sublease of part of a building, which is a separate policy.
Yeah, I think the key was I didn't want it to limit us to what we can do, and that's a way that doesn't happen.
So with the change that Ms. Stone just referenced and the two I referenced, cross-referencing and making it effective January 1, does that, if we make those changes, or evidently there's one more?
Mr. Shue, may I run through my list of what I think the 4 revisions I've heard?
I would prefer that you do.
Okay. And unfortunately, they're in order we discussed, not in logical order for the policy. The first one is in section H, to add the cross-reference to the parent and student grievance procedure, to add a cross-reference to the 5000 series. The second being in section D, to remove the term regular when discussing the 2 discounts for the nonprofit organizations and nonprofit youth organizations. 3, indicate that the new fee structure will be effective January 1, 2014. And the 4th in section D, add in what is now the second paragraph, except for it needs to specify Cabarrus County school-related groups.
Well, looks like we got it down, Mr. Louder.
Yes, sir.
So, are there any further discussions? Everybody happy with this? Okay, do I have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Shoemaker, you have a question?
Well, Mr. Phillips had brought up his point, and I didn't hear any other discussion on that. Did anyone else want to entertain what he brought up?
I thought that was pretty cut and dry on that, because we definitely need to define school, Cabarrus County schools.
No, he was
talking
talking
about
about the discount.
50% discount for the youth groups. That
Okay.
Instead, we should just have a standard discount for all nonprofits.
I would just like to echo what Ms. Klutz said, who did a good job doing an eloquent explanation of what the very much the vast majority of the committee, especially principals, were saying. These are organizations. They're not making a profit, but they're using this to supplement our students while they're here at our school, and we want to encourage that. That helps us with dropout prevention. That helps us, supplement our students. So while they're our students, sometimes they're using that an hour after school. So it was a strong feeling by everybody there that we should give them an incentive to want to be there more. Again, the board will make that decision, but I do think what she said was very strong opinion of the people that were polled.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
I
Louder.
would just point out, it won't just be our students. There's not a requirement that those groups getting the 50% discount cater only to Cabarrus County school students. It's to any group that is principally doing services for people under 21.
Okay, board members, are there any further discussion on this policy?
Should we have the policy committee go back and take that out? Or
I don't, Mr. Chairman, I don't know. I think we were okay on the first 4. It seemed like but maybe if we need to go down the road so we can, if we have enough support for what Jeff's saying, we change it, and if we don't, we go with, I mean, it's a board decision, so, I mean,
It's only the first reading, so y'all can think about it. The second time
Oh,
up, if what I make it make sense, we could vote
And that's
differently.
sort of what I've been trying to project the whole time. But we need to discuss this, so we need to bring it out, get everybody's feelings and all. And so I do like this suggestion that we move it to January 1 to become effective. But then, like I said earlier, it's going to have to come back to us with the second reading anyway at some point. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know whether we can get it back in September, but at the latest, probably October. And then that'll give us plenty of time for you to get your notifications and all of that out, because it won't go into effect until it's been approved on the second reading anyway. So what I'd like to do at this point is just to entertain a motion that the changes that our attorney has made note of be incorporated into this policy, including the effective date, that this policy will be approved with those changes on the first reading. Now, is that pretty clear? All right, do I have a motion? Do we
I'd like to
accept
make that motion that we incorporate the 4 changes as noted by Ms. Stone, and that this policy be moved out of the first reading.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. He makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kiger seconds the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
I opposed.
Okay, we got 5-0. Ms. Monroe, is that right? Mr. Phillips? Mr. Phillips and Ms. Carpenter, no. And
Yeah, because I'm with Jeff on my hang-up is on my hang-up's on the price too, because I'm with Jeff, we're not, majority are, I wish we could have a clearance, some kind of distinguished on the groups, because you do have some of those groups that are for profit. And that's where I have and I brought this up at policy committee, because you've got some of these youth groups that are actually for profit. They collect money from parents and they get money and they're for profit. And that's where my problem is. And that's my 2 cents.
Well, it looks to me like, Mr. Walter, you voted for it, didn't you?
As the first reading, yes.
Okay, so we got 5-2 on first reading. These changes that you're talking about and Mr. Phillips is talking about can be looked into by the policy committee between now and when it's brought back to us for a second reading. So it's approved as it stands now. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, board members. Thank you, Ms. Klutz, and also Dr. Louder. All right, board members, we're going to move on to the next policy here, and this was a policy that Ms. Carpenter had some issues with, and it's policy number 4700. It's student records, and this is on a second reading. So when we approve this policy or whatever we do on it, that's when it comes into effect. And so I'd like to ask Dr. Louder if he will elaborate maybe a minute or two, and then we'll start with Ms. Carpenter since she was the one who had issues. I think everybody else was pretty much okay with it, but I want to hear
Yeah,
from
it was a very minor change. It was just changing, I think, a specific price for a copy to something to say, that may change, as Ms. Klutz alluded to, that can change over time. That was really the only change. And then I think Ms. Carpenter had some objections with student records, so I think that's the extent.
And that's because Ms. Carpenter just has a problem with student records, and basically I'll just state what my problem still is. I just think that we're giving too much information out, and we do have what we can, it is our prerogative to say what we're going to have in student records, and I just think we're giving out too much information. I know that we do have the thing where the parents can opt out. We do have that in our manual that we give out, but I just think we're giving out too much information, and that's where I come from on that, and that's why I will be voting against this.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter, and I think that's why it's on the action agenda, so you could do that. Okay, are there any other discussions on policy 4700? Because as we know, and Ms. Carpenter...
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification on what Ms. Carpenter said. We're not giving it out. It has to be requested. So to me, there's a distinction there that maybe it's minor, but we're not just broadcasting it out on the website. It has to be a military recruiter, an athletic recruiter from a school, an academic recruiter from a school, the playbill for the for a play at the drama club or whatever, so that they can listen in a program. So I know I'm not trying to change your mind. I just, the notion that we're just giving it out, I don't agree with that phraseology.
I agree. Do we have any further discussion on 4700? Okay, do I have a motion that policy 4700 be approved as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Shoemaker makes the motion. Mr. Harrison seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say yea. Okay, so it's 6-0. Ms. Carpenter, she voted against. I can say she's 6-1. She's been consistent. She has been consistent with that, so that's about like contracts. She's very consistent with them, too. Okay, thank you, Mr. Louder. All right, now we'll move on to 8.8, and this is where Mr. Wickey was going to talk to us about the bids on the security cameras for those 5 schools. So, Mr. Wickey, the podium's yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members. I am happy to announce that we did have the project bids received this morning, and as you can see from the bid tab that's been highlighted for your benefit, we do have a low bidder in Security 101. Their project proposal was a total cost of $435,784, including a number of alternate bids. I will point out that this was a very involved bid document. A lot of what you see is information gathering, and really, as you see in the left-hand column, the words unit price and the numbers after that. The unit price is simply something that we use during the project, or projects in this case, where we want to add or deduct an item. And these items typically, in this case, are cameras or related equipment. And so let's say we decide we have money left in the project, we missed covering an area in a school, we need to add a camera. Well, the contractor does not get to negotiate with us. He's given us his price, and that's what our expectation is. That's the price that we'll pay for it. So he doesn't get to arm wrestle with us each time we want to add or deduct something. So going down, the base bid sum for Security 101 was, now look at this, $381,784. And that across the board, as you can see, is the low bid price for the base sum. And then if you go down, Kelly, could you scan down? Yeah. Go down all the way to the lowest portions. You'll see the yellow there. There we had alternate bids taken for the removal of existing equipment. Basically, the existing camera systems are no longer of use to us because they're antiquated equipment. Well, specifically, they're analog equipment. It wouldn't work with the digital systems that we're putting in. So we're going to have them remove all that equipment, return it to us, but that's the cost for doing that work. And so we are accepting or recommending acceptance of all of the 1A, B, C, D, and E alternates. And alternate 2 is an extension of the guarantee for both maintenance and service. And that price under Security 101 is $35,000. That's to take it from a 1-year warranty period to a 5-year warranty period, which in this case is very important. And again, if you go across the line looking at the numbers for the other bidders, Security 101 is very, very low in that regard.
Why would that be? I mean, that's a huge difference.
What was explained to us, and we did review this with Security 101's representative at great detail today, he looks at it, he automatically gets a 2-year warranty from the manufacturer that comes to him as a supplier of the equipment. So he said to look at an additional 3 years. One thing I need to explain about Security 101 is doing a number of our schools already. They've installed them and maintained them for us, and they also recently got a contract to do a number of small projects at, I believe it was 5 other schools. So they're very familiar with us. We are familiar with them. And the guarantee, as he said, he is routinely here, his staff are in our area working on the different systems, making sure that it's all working properly. So for him to add the extension is not the same as for someone who is not in the area and has to come here to take care of a camera that goes down. And so you see that reflected in the numbers. That's his opinion and our belief. The Panduit, however, he's indicated that Panduit is a particular type of molding that surrounds cabling when it's exposed on a wall. And we utilize Panduit throughout our system. It is a preferred vendor because we've been dedicated through all our most recent new construction and in any of the more recent video systems that we've put in. And as a result, all the parts that we have on staff in place and our staff are trained for the Panduit system. So there again, we do recommend going with the last alternate number 3, at a price of $14,000. All that adds up to a total of $435,784, which is significantly below the approved budget of $831. I'm sorry, I keep misreading that, $831,240. The contractor, as I said, is well known to us. He hasn't done quite this large a number of projects in the past, but he's done several projects at one time for us. He has brought in 2 sub-consultants to work with him to do the cabling portion, which is a very labor-intensive part of the work. So that's being handled by the subcontractors that have also worked with him in a number of other projects. So our feeling is that, and by the way, we really grilled him. The consultant was involved in the meeting with him this morning, and we grilled him about pretty much everything that came to mind about the projects, and he basically said at the price that he submitted, he is still making a profit, and he feels very comfortable in what he submitted. The one caveat that I would say is we would recommend this bidder and his proposal to you, but with the caveat that he answers all of the questions the consultant has asked him to answer. And that's fairly routine. I mean, we want to know specifics about some of the equipment that he's supplying and a couple of technical questions about the size of some of the storage capacity of the servers. And there was one other question that he did ask. I feel, again, having worked with them, I feel that they will deliver a satisfactory answer, but it is something that we will wait on in terms of actually signing a contract to get that information from them. But other than that, we have no reservations in recommending this to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitkey. Board members, you've got the bid tabs here before you. You've heard Mr. Whitkey's explanation from the bids and the requirements and all that. I'd like to start on Mr. Phillips' side and see if you have questions concerning this to Mr. Whitkey, and then we'll come on down the board and then we'll vote.
No, you answered my questions. I mean, it was real eye-opener to see the difference in the bids. I mean, it's about 40% lower than even the next lowest bid. And so, yeah, I was wondering if they were just buying their way into a contract to try to get experience, which is not bad if we're the ones that benefit from it.
Right.
But the fact that they are already being used by our system gives me more confidence. And as long as you hold them to it, it's going to be a great deal for the taxpayers of Cabarrus County.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Harrison.
And again, I'll echo that. Great job holding down the numbers and the expenses. At least Mrs. Carpenter get a reputation among us as being the only one who's consistent among us, which is not true. We're all consistent to varying degrees. I have harped on the idea of some kind of screen around cameras, which to me would maintain the operation of the devices and preserve the life and the use of the devices for a longer period of time. Is that at all accommodated in these designs?
Yes, wherever the cameras are easily accessible.
Are they protected by some external cage, for lack of a better word?
They are, sir. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
hallelujah. Thank you so much. Thank you. And just one quick question. At the bottom of this presentation is Buford Golf Associates of Columbia, South Carolina. How does that come into play with the 4 different bidding companies that we have there? I just didn't understand that notation at the bottom of the...
Right, I'm sorry, I should have explained that. Buford Goff Associates are our design consultants for the project. We reviewed, I think that we had 4 or 5 firms that had national recognition for doing this work, and they stood out as a firm that, one, were relatively close to us considering where some of the other consultants were coming from, but also that they had done this size job and much, much bigger ones. This was not stretching them by any part of the imagination. They have done schoolwork as well as very, very secure prisons, hospitals, all of that. And so they brought, I think, a very, very long list of projects that we could feel comfortable that they could handle this work. As I've been told by more than one vendor, the specifications they created were excellent. They were clear and concise and actually made for a good bidding environment.
So is Buford Goss the, did I say that right?
Buford Goff.
Buford Goff. Are they the primary contractor in these 4, or the Security 101 is a subcontractor?
No, sir. The Buford Goff
I guess I don't
Associates-
understand the relationship.
Right.
is all I mean.
Buford Goff is our design consultant. He's a design engineer, the firm is, and they designed the project, created the specifications, and assisted us with bidding the work.
Mhm.
Now they step back, and a contractor who we award the contract to actually do the physical installation, purchase and installation of the equipment. So they're our employee, if you will. Buford Goff is, and they work for us.
Do we need that middleman?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
And the
fine,
reason-
thank you.
yeah.
There's an old Benny Hill skit about the middleman, I won't go into it. But if we need their expertise, I respect that. But thanks for saving so much money in this case, and thank you for getting those cages around those cameras.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. The consultant here, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wicke, but it's basically the same thing as an architect. You know, he's just, he designs camera systems and wiring systems and that type thing, whereas architects do buildings. Same principles, though. If that helps better explain it. Mr. Walter, do you have any comments?
Yeah, a couple. I think this is potentially excellent news. I know there are, the 5 schools here?
Yes, sir.
But there is a list of more schools that really need the camera system. Will this give us an opportunity to address some of those issues as well?
Potentially. I think that we'd like to get a little further down the road, see, the one thing that concerns all of us is that we're dealing with very old buildings in some cases and conditions that had very limited documentation on. So we want to get well into the projects before we start to look at that possibility. And also, we need to speak to the county about that as well, because the funding is coming through the commissioners. So,
Correct.
But there clearly are needs out there that we could, consider.
That's one of my priorities is the safety at school, and camera systems is one of those important things. Are we, like security summit, I guess we went to a couple months ago, where they had the presentation on the police officers being able to view this stuff remotely. Is that part of this as well? Or?
It is. This is a web-based software that the county sheriff's office and police can use.
I think that's great. Thank you. Good news all around. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. It's always good news when we can save some money. Commissioners love that.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Kiger.
Nothing to add.
Okay, Ms. Carpenter, you have a comment?
No, I always got a comment. All right, number 1, those are capital dollars then we're saving, you're telling me?
Yes, ma'am.
So I can only use what I'm saving for capital.
Correct.
All right. All right. Number 2, I noticed that when I'm looking at this bid document that all of them have electrical subcontractors except that company. Why is that?
Because they do have internal staff that are electricians, they're licensed electricians.
Okay, so that's the reason that they don't, because everybody else had one. That. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that just
No, it's a
stuck
fair
out,
question.
and I was curious why they didn't, because
Right.
everybody else did have one. Seems like they would put us or something in there. So that was the other question that I had on. And this price does include all of the schools. I mean, those 5, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because you did clarify, this is for all 5,
Yes,
right?
we did do
Okay,
that,
that
yes.
was the other thing, because it was so much lower.
Yes.
So I don't want them to pop up and say, oh, this is only for 1, because the price was so low. So it is for all 5. Okay, that's my
Thank you, thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Shoemaker, you have comments, questions?
Is this firm a local firm? Because you said that they'd work on our property. Are they actually out of this area?
They're out of Charlotte.
They're out of
Yes.
Charlotte. And the other 3 firms that we bid, are any of them local?
I believe that Kratos and EO Integrated Systems do have offices, but I believe the closest office is Raleigh for those firms. They're larger firms. And,
So we were actually really utilizing a firm that's within our regional area.
Yes,
So we're keeping the money in our community for the most part.
that's correct.
That's excellent. When after you let this contract and you go forward, if this board chooses to go with what you've recommended, will you be building into that some type of 5% for overages or underages, or a pad? And how much are you thinking that you're going to put in there for change orders?
Normally, in new construction, it would be less than in existing construction. I'd still like to hold to about 7%, possibly even 10%, because of the amount of older equipment, but also older environments, building components that we have to deal with. And as such, I would like to keep at least that level of contingency in the project.
So your contingency, right now you're saying that you would like us to make a motion for $435,000, which includes the 2 alternates that are in the bid, right?
Well, actually, there's 7, I believe, 7
Okay,
alternates.
7.
But, yes, and that's for this contract, but that's not, I mean, obviously, the budget for the project allows us a lot more funding.
All right, so when we see the actual project, when we see the project on our list for county one-time funds for this particular project, we'll see the $435,000 plus an additional contingency of 7%, or 107% of this number.
Yes,
And
you'll
that's the
also-
way it'll be shown, so that there's no confusion once we start looking at your documentation.
Right, and you'll also see the design fee as well.
All right. Oh, the design fee for Buford Golf and Company.
Correct.
All right. And the total was 831, which was what we had allocated for the entire design to implementation.
Right.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Some excellent clarification questions. Thank you. Board members, are there any other discussion on this camera items? Okay, I would entertain a motion that the board award a construction contract for the new camera systems in all 5 schools, which are Central Cabarrus High School, Concord High School, J.M. Robinson High School, Mount Pleasant High School, and the Glenn Center, be approved in the amount of $435,784, which includes the base bid of $381,784,000, plus an additional $54,000 for recommended bid alternates numbers 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E, 2, and 3, and also this will go to Security 101. They are the low bidder. Do I have a motion that we approve this contract?
So moved.
Mr. Kiger approves the motion.
Second.
Mr. Harrison seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, the motion carries 7-0. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wiki.
Thank you very much.
All right, the last item on our open session tonight is 8.09. This is, we're asking for approval of the Cabarrus County Schools fee structure. We got Dr. Jason Van Hukelum at the podium, and he's going to discuss this with us, and we'll move forward.
Had a chance to look at your fees there. We ask that you approve the fees as listed there for the 2013-2014 school year.
Thank you, Dr. Van Hukelum. Board members, we'll start on Mr. Shoemaker's side. If you have any questions or concerns about this, now's the time to do it, and then we're going to discuss it and vote on it. So, Mr. Shoemaker, the podium's yours.
I have no questions.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Carpenter, you have questions, concerns? Mr. Kiger?
Nope.
Mr. Walter?
Excuse me, this refers to policy 4600, student fees. And it talks about, well, let's see. Any fees imposed or waived or reduced by students who demonstrate an economic hardship. What exactly does that mean?
Typically, that refers to free and reduced lunch students. Schools handle that at the school level. For example, they have ways to subsidize costs for students that are in need, typically through your counselors, social workers, and those type of personnel.
Okay, so we have a significant amount of students that are on the free and reduced lunch program. We do.
Well, we have 40 to 43% on any given year in the district. The number of students that actually apply for and kind of seek out that aid is much less than that 40%. But the schools handle that at the school level.
Okay, I'm just concerned if we've got, if folks can be waive the fees that who pay. Do we end up subsidizing most of those fees? Is that?
The schools do subsidize many of those fees, out of school funds.
Out of school funds.
Right, not out of district funds. And McKinney-Vento also plays into that.
The automatic part for McKinney-Vento, which are your homeless population, you do have to eliminate fees because that's a barrier for enrollment.
That's all these.
Mm. And so that's primarily the group you're addressing here.
Mr. Walter, you good?
Yeah, I don't like the increase in the graduating student cap and gown. That's a significant increase, but what can you do about it? So,
well, unfortunately, we're under contract with Jostens, I believe,
Correct.
for what, 2 more years?
We get a 3.
For 3 years, and this was their increase. It wasn't the school increase.
Correct.
It was their increase, so we're stuck with it. And then it comes time to bid, and then maybe we can get something a little bit better at that time. Right. Mr. Harrison, you have any comments, concerns?
At the risk of sounding like a parrot, where does the money go?
Well, most of for most of these fees, it goes to the purchase of something. So you got a recorder, or
Right.
you got a book, or you have an AP exam, or something like that. The instructional money, that $10 fee that we try to charge every student, that goes into the school funds. Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but every school keeps their own money based on how much they collect from their schools.
So the price of a recorder is $5. They accumulate X number of $5 payments
Correct.
from whatever source, and that is a straight pass-through
Exactly.
to that vendor for that service,
Exactly, yes. And that's done at the school level. So
which goes back to some other county-level discussions several months ago when we were pulling together data of money that the schools collect for these types of things. It's a straight pass-through in most of these cases.
Correct. Yep.
That's good information, and I wish the community understood that.
Right.
It might sound like it's going to the school somehow, but the school is accumulating it and then it's paying one invoice to
Correct.
that vendor for that
Exactly.
service. They're just holding that amount of money for a week or two or whatever, and then it is paying off some provider of a service. That money's not sitting
No, sir.
for very long
Right.
at the office level of each school.
Absolutely. Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Phillips, you have any comments, concerns?
Well, I'll just say you can tell Jostens that at least one school board member is not happy that they have a contract that allows them to raise their price by 70% from one year to the next. And I question why we signed such a contract if it allows that kind of flexibility. I know that Mr. Whitkey would not be happy if one of his contractors, such as the one we just approved, told him 1 year from now, oh, by the way, that cost that we gave you is out of date. We've got to raise our rates by 70%.
I have limited knowledge about this contract, but I will give you the knowledge that I do have. When that contract was reviewed, prior to Dr. Louder taking that position, we were told that the price on all of their items had not been increased over the last 8 years, and that it was a struggle, and that we probably should have had increases over those 8 years, but because of the economic times that we were in, Jostens was good enough to hold back and not give us an increase over those 8 years. So they're just in essence catching up. It does seem quite high, and when you look at it at 1 year, but if you look at it over 8 years, it's not as significant.
And so what's to prevent them from next year putting in another $7 increase?
So we sign a contract with them, and I think this contract is a 3-year contract. So when we go into a new contract with them, they'll be able to negotiate a higher price at that point. But my understanding is that we'll keep these price constant for 3 years because we signed that contract.
Okay, so this
This was a new contract that we signed.
is, and it's already been signed, so we can't back out of it.
It was signed, yes.
But we signed it without seeing what the prices were, is what it sounds like, which doesn't make me happy at all.
Administration was aware of the contractual increase, and it was just on those particular items, not contract-wide.
Okay, this goes back to probably Jason. On the advanced placement exams, so if a student's on free or reduced lunch, wants to take an AP exam, but their parents are saying, whoa, that's, we don't have that kind of money to just give you for an exam. They can go to the counselor and say, look, I'm having a hard time convincing mom and dad.
Correct. And many times the counselors help facilitate that conversation and even not seek them out, but they know the situation of the family. And two other things with that. So number one, like you said, the schools really have a good culture around that and know who the kids are that are going to need the help. Secondly, we apply for a state grant every year that subsidizes the cost and gets that down to about $25 per exam. It's an annual grant to the federal government, so it's never guaranteed, but we typically get that. And then third, I would point to the state's budget that was recently passed, and if you'll notice, there's a little piece in there that says next school year, 2014, I believe there's $12 million allocated for all students, I believe, not just low-income students, for AP exams. So that will help defray some of that cost in the future as well.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I only have one question, and then we'll put this up for vote, and that is on the iPad usage, which is a first-time fee, I believe, for the STEM program at Central. Is that a refundable fee, or is that do they get that back at the end of the year when they turn the iPad in? I believe so. Or is that something that we're going to charge and we keep that for usage of the?
No, actually, that fee is to cover the insurance on those machines.
Well, I just
That if the
wanted-
student breaks it, then it's obviously repaired.
Well, that's what I was wanting clarification of what it's for, so so the community will know that they're not paying $50 to use the computer, the iPad. They're using that to cover the cost of the insurance in the event they break it or they lose it, they drop it in the tub or in the pool or whatever, then obviously this will take care of the cost, and it won't cost the school system replacement fees. Okay, that's
And the
clear.
uniqueness that that's a one-to-one, so we actually issue that device to the student. We don't do that with any other program. The
Okay.
students take it home, they personalize it, it's theirs for the year.
Okay, well, that's good. All right, board members, you've heard it. Are there any other discussion on the fee structure? All right, do I have a motion that we accept the 2013-2014 Cabarrus County Schools fee structure be approved as it's presented?
So moved.
Mr. Harrison makes the motion.
Second.
Ms. Carpenter seconds the motion. Are there any, all in favor say aye? Aye. Are any opposed?
No.
Okay, the motion carries 6-1. Mr. Phillips dissenting. Okay? Thank you, Dr. Van Huckelen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of our open session tonight. It's time for the board to convene in closed session. May I have a motion that the board convene in the closed session?
Second.
Ms. Carpenter makes the motion. Mr.
Second.
Walter seconds the motion. All in favor say aye. Okay, folks, we're going to convene in closed session. Good night to all of you that are here in attendance, and good night to those that are on our viewing audience, and we'll see you back here in September. Good night to everyone.